Welcome, fellow horror hounds, and welcome to the latest episode of Talk and Stalk, your unholy home for horror. I'm your host, as always, Barry, and today I'm joined by my corrupted co-host, the diabolical Darren.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here as always, and looking forward to this film.
Very glad to have you back. And yeah, the movie that we're actually going to focus on today is 1980's psychosexual movie, Dressed to Kill, directed by Brian De Palma. Now, let's just quickly get off the bat here. Brian De Palma, for anyone that's familiar with him, knows that he's an ardent fan of Hitchcock. There's clearly a lot of echoes of Hitchcock, certainly in his earlier films, from the likes of 73 Sisters, Obsession in 76, and of course, Dressed to Kill, as well as Blowout in 81. Now, Dressed to Kill clearly pays homage to a certain movie from 1960, which I deem to really kind of be the granddaddy of contemporary horror films, Psycho. Darren, let's quickly just ask you, what was your kind of introduction to Dressed to Kill? When did you first watch this film?
Well, that would have been about 15, 16 years ago. I started off basically just listening to podcasts and trying to get as much lists on slasher films as I could. So I got an email off this one guy online, and he sent me a list, and that included Dressed to Kill. Yeah. So I looked down the list, I looked up the film, saw, Michael Caine, Angie Dickinson. I thought, well, maybe this guy's got this wrong. And then I looked up the synopsis and everything, and I thought, well, I'll give that a go. Yeah. And since that day then, from watching it the first time, I fell in love with the film. Yeah. One of my favourite De Palma films, along with Carrie, one of my favourite films.
Yeah. Obviously, Brian De Palma actually directed Carrie in 1976. The very first Stephen King adaptation to actually be made into a film, and still one of the very best to this day. Very deftly directed by Brian De Palma. And of course, in Sisters, in 73, starring Margot Kidder. And in that movie clearly pays homage to Hitchcock's classic thriller, 1954's Rear Window, as well as echoes of Rope in 1948, which was actually Hitchcock's first colour movie. Obsession very much pays homage to Vertigo in 58, which is actually my all-time favourite Hitchcock film. And of course, this film, Psycho. The comparisons are, really quite staggering. In this movie, we get a cross-dressing killer, and we actually get, quite notably, we get what we believe to be the lead star of the movie actually killed off relatively early on in the film as well, and also blonde, much like Janet Leigh's character, Marion Crane, in the shower in Psycho. Once again, playing on people's expectations.
Yeah, that has to be a nod to Hitchcock.
It is.
And there's quite a few throughout the film, actually.
Yeah, there is, certainly.
And there's a few coincidences as well, because you've got, like, Dennis Franz, who went on to star in one of the Psycho sequels. I think it was Psycho 2, wasn't it?
Psycho 2, yeah.
So, yeah, there's little things like that throughout the film that, coincidences and, like, Hitchcock nods.
Yeah, he's an ardent fan of Hitchcock. Brian De Palma's favourite director is Alfred Hitchcock, and it's clearly evident in, like I said, especially a lot of his earlier films. In Dressed to Kill, for example, as well, we get the elevator scene, which, the film has become quite famous for. It's essentially Psycho in an elevator. And
yeah, absolutely.
In this movie as well, it's really kind of, at its core, kind of a Western Giallo. There are definitely many of the ingredients from Giallo, which is obviously, an typically Italian subgenre of Italian cinema.
What I found, really astounding was the interview with De Palma, where he claims he's never seen a Dario Argento film before this film was made, and he's got no roots to the Giallo
film. Which is really hard to believe.
I don't believe it.
Very hard to believe, because... Yeah, the ingredients are pretty much all there. We get a black-gloved, razor-wielding killer, and also, which again became certainly a trope for Argento's films, a lead character in the movie actually goes on to basically conduct an investigation themselves. The police are really kind of just in the backdrop. and it's a character, and that again was kind of a very common trope for Giallo.
Yeah, there's no way, because at the time he was hanging around with the likes of Scorsese,
Who he's good friends with. Yeah.
Yeah, so they were all going to see films in the early, 70s in New York, and there's no way he wouldn't have come across Deep Red or something, Bird with Crystal Plumage. There's no way.
Yeah, because, quickly talking about the elevator scene, obviously it's like lifted right out of an Argento film. It would be right at home in a Dario Argento film.
Well, I got written down. Yeah, you could put this straight in Deep Red, and you wouldn't know the difference.
Yeah, as I say, black gloves, razor wielding, real kind of sadistic nature to it. Like you said, this film actually stars Michael Caine. Michael Caine's an actor that doesn't really need any introduction. A very established British actor. I do believe that the role was originally offered to Sean Connery.
Yeah, and was it due to some commitments he couldn't take it on?
Yeah, and he obviously later did collaborate with Scorsese on The Untouchables in 1987. Very good film. Sean Connery, I can't imagine Sean Connery in this role. I really can't.
No, I think Michael Caine just nails it, and we'll come into that a bit in a bit, because actually there was a few performances in this that were up for the Razzie Awards in 1980.
There was Nancy Allen, of course, who was actually the then wife of Brian De Palma. She actually starred in four of his movies. Obviously, the first one being in Carrie in 1976. And her last one was actually Blowout in 1981.
I think she's terrible in this, to be honest. But it doesn't detract my, enjoyment of the film.
Well, he actually specifically wrote the role for her, actually. There were some other names...
Go on.
Oh, no, there were other names thrown towards, but Brian De Palma wanted Nancy Allen for this role. That's the only actress he wanted for this role. The role was actually written for her.
Don't you think it's the old Rob Zombie, getting Sherry Moon Zombie into his
there's
films?
There's going to be, bias, personal preference and that, obviously. Obviously, she's probably going to be handed roles on a silver platter and all that. Let's just, because, talking about this film and that, as I said, it's very much, it is a homage. I mean, some people would say that De Palma rips off Hitchcock. Some would say he certainly pays homage and pays respect to Hitchcock. Whatever the case, I think Brian De Palma is a very efficient director. He makes great use of camera work. He's very skilled at his craft. I mean, this is a guy that has covered a lot of genres as well. You think when he started off with films like Sisters and Carrie, and he went on to do films like, gangster classic Scarface, in 1983, The Untouchables. He even directed the first Mission Impossible. This is a guy that has covered many different genres, hasn't he?
Yeah, and I think it's going back to where, Dario Argento certainly made one film that wasn't in the genre. But I think his better films are in the thriller horror genre.
I would agree. Let's not forget, he also directed another psychological thriller / horror movie called Raising Cain, starring John Lithgow.
Yeah, I do own the Arrow Blu-ray of that, but I've never watched it. So
okay, it's not a bad movie. And of course, not to go too much off topic. Let's just talk about quickly how this film actually starts. You actually feel like you're watching a softcore porno. The way this movie actually begins. Now, it's quite ironic, actually, because in Carrie, released 4 years prior, that movie actually starts off with a shower scene, as does this one. And it's clear that De Palma has a real kind of affinity with female sexuality, if you will, in a lot of his earlier works, even with Sisters as well.
Yeah, definitely. With the funny thing with the Carrie, not to go off board, I remember watching that as a kid, and my dad turned it off after 3 minutes because of that shower scene.
Yeah.
Angie Dickinson, she has a body double in this, funnily enough.
She does. It wasn't actually her. When the film first came out, the producers actually encouraged her to claim that the body was hers, but it later came out that it was actually Victoria Johnson, who didn't actually give her name to the movie, but it wasn't actually Dickinson. And she, I believe, not to get too crude or anything, but Victoria Johnson had to actually dye her her pubic hair.
Yeah, yeah.
Because they had different hair colour.
Right. And ironically, he went on to make a film called Body Double in 1984.
Yeah, she did. Yeah. The opening, and again, spoiler alert, I'm assuming everyone that's listening probably has seen this film anyway. Again, making alludes to Carrie's, there's certainly some parallels. Starts with a shower scene, ends with a dream sequence as well.
Yeah.
Kind of a jump scare ending, if you will, as, De Palma did in 1976 with Carrie, with Carrie's bloodied hand coming out of the grave, which I'm sure, had a lot of popcorn flying, back in the day.
Yeah, it's same out that Friday the 13th came out a few years later, and
yeah,
it's that, it looks like it's tacked on, but there's method behind the madness, because just when you think, oh, that's it, Michael Caine, we're going to come into that, as the killer. And then it all settles down, and then we don't realise there's another thing to come.
Yeah. As I said, we can tell. You can tell that De Palma is a big Hitchcock fan. There's even a character mentioned in this movie called Norma, and for anyone that's a Psycho fan knows that Norma was Norman Bates's mother. That's right. So just another little nod that he does there. This film has a very kind of overtly sexual, sensual opening, and as I said, it's a very psychosexual film. There is a lot of sexual components, in fact, to this movie, and it is one of them movies, I think it's very deftly directed, that clearly does pay homage to Psycho, as well as essentially being an American-made giallo, even though, as you said, De Palma may deny that. This film definitely has giallo written all over it.
And he had a bit of trouble with the MPAA, I think.
Yes, he had to really... Versions. Yes, he really had to battle. Now, the thing is, De Palma actually wrote a screenplay based on Cruising. Originally, he was dubbed to direct Cruising, which again was a very controversial film, released the very same year, 1980. And both movies were released to great controversy, and they had numerous battles with the MPAA. But he was going to do Cruising, and he ended up directing Dressed to Kill instead. Of course, Cruising ended up going to William Friedkin, probably most famous for the likes of The Exorcist and The French Connection. But this film was controversial, yes, and they had to really battle the MPAA to give this film an R rating and to try and avoid an X rating.
It was all to do with the, obviously, violence against women aspect. But Roger Ebert actually championed this film, or he certainly give it, a good review, which was surprising at the time because he was on a hate mission against anything slasher.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was a bit surprising. But although they had a lot of problems with women picketing and all that for Cruising.
Yeah.
I don't think it was quite as bad as it was for this film.
No, certainly not. With, we can't really go into the whole politics of everything, but with a certain thing that came around in the early 80s, Cruising was a film that was reviled by many upon release. But now it's widely dubbed to be very much a great film of the genre. With Dressed to Kill, let's just quickly talk. As I say, you've got Angie Dickinson in this film, who basically I believe she gets top billing, and much like with Psycho, Janet Leigh killed off. You expect her to be the main character in the movie. She's killed off, which again I don't really think anyone would have seen coming. There's a little nod actually to Scorsese in this film. Obviously, well, let's quickly talk about the gallery. Let's talk about the gallery scene that seemingly goes on forever. It's a very long, extended scene, isn't it, in this film?
Yeah, there's some great use of POV shots in this.
Yeah.
And you've got the music playing throughout, and it's very giallo, like a very giallo-like theme music.
Yeah. Pino Donaggio's music is really quite great in this movie. Absolutely love his score. He had a really good score for The Howling as well, I think. I think that film has a pretty good score. But yeah, what De Palma does, he takes... Now, this is a scene that's nearly 9 minutes long with no dialogue whatsoever.
Yeah.
There's this whole kind of cat and mouse sequence with no dialogue. Now, on paper, this would like scream boring, but what they do is they take something that is basically, you could say, almost kind of meaningless and banal, and they actually add a level of intensity to it through the great camera work and the great score by Pino Donaggio.
Yeah, definitely. It's shot in such a way, like you say, you're never bored. There's always something going on, even though it's obviously more visual.
Yeah.
And I think it plays well, because she sees this sort of handsome stranger.
Yeah.
And then they sort of play off with each other, sort of thing.
Yeah.
She drops her glove. She thinks that he's going to attack her, and then realizes about 2 minutes later that he's not.
Yeah.
And then they sort of, I don't know, they sort of walk around, following each other after that. But it's a really well.
It's really well, yeah. It's really well filmed, isn't it? It's a scene that, admittedly, it goes on for a long time, certainly, but it's some great filming techniques, and as I say, just Pino Donaggio's score that accompanies the scene really kind of adds just a certain degree of intensity to that scene. And of course, they end up in a cab and they're getting it on, and there's nothing like a bit of romance, is there? Getting it on in the back of a cab.
Exactly, yeah. They have sex, apparently, and go all the way in the back of the cab.
They do, and of course, we know that she contracts. Now, this is the thing I was going to get to, actually. She contracts a venereal disease, which, again, is making statements. It's making commentary. Come on, protective sex.
Yeah, that's right. But there's one clue just before that, and I don't know if you noticed, but as she's walking down the steps in the museum,
I know what you're going to say.
We see the shot of the killer.
We do. Blink and you'll miss it.
It's a Dario Argento moment where you blink and you miss it. I think the first time I seen the film, I never twigged. Yeah. But obviously when you get to know the film, you're studying it. You do see it.
Yeah.
But that's the first real clue.
Yeah, yes, you get a very blink and you'll miss it moment. The camera pans across. Again, it's kind of good camera work, and we quickly get a very quick glimpse of the killer. And we even in the background, when they're at the cab, we see the killer pick up the glove.
That's right.
As well. Very quickly. Now, my missus, I've mentioned this before, she's like Miss Marple. She rarely ever misses anything. She didn't pick up on it. I had to point it out to her. Right. She watched it. Well, she'd actually watched it years ago, and then she watched it for the first time in about 15 years last night, and she actually missed that moment. So now, I'm going to be honest here. I don't think you have to be Sherlock Holmes to work out who the killer is in this movie.
No, and I don't think that detracts from anything.
Not at all. I think within the first 15 or 20 minutes or so of this film, you can work out who the killer is.
Yeah, I think I did the first time I saw it.
Yeah,
but the only thing you might not work out is like the little bit of a twist at the end with the woman police officer. Maybe you won't work that part out.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, I believe that because obviously, spoiler alert here, Michael Caine is the killer. Michael Caine has identity disorder, if you will. Now, there's a moment. Obviously, there's an interaction. There's a scene. Between him and Angela Dickinson's character, and she has doubts about herself as being an attractive woman, and she actually asks him, would you want to sleep with me? Do you find me attractive? And he says, yes, I do. And she says, well, what's stopping you from sleeping with me? And there's that glance he gives to the mirror.
Yes,
there's that little glance as if to say, and then he comes out. There's a couple of second pause, and he says, because I'm married. That moment as well, depending on how you interpret it, we realise, much like Norman Bates from Psycho, whenever there's a sexual inclination, whenever he's attracted to someone, the other personality comes out to the forefront.
Yes, and it's reflected throughout the film. I think it happens at least 2 or 3 times.
Yes, he looks in the mirror on a few occasions, yes. For example, with... her name is actually escaping me, but Nancy Allen's character, the prostitute.
Oh, Liz.
Liz, yes. Again, when she's undressing, and there's a moment where he looks in the mirror. Now, we're thrown off somewhat, because we learn of a character in this movie, a patient of Dr. Elliot, called Bobby.
Yes. Now this is where De Palma is trying to play with you a little bit and not give you the whole story.
Yeah, he's trying to throw you off. Bobby, interestingly, he's not the voice of Michael Caine. Now, quickly as well, Michael Caine, obviously, in this film we get... I mean, this is another thing that's kind of strange. Now, Michael Caine's a tall bloke. Michael Caine's actually 6'2". And during the film, obviously, there's mentions of a blonde woman trying to kill. But wouldn't you be like, hang on, there's a tall blonde woman?
Yeah.
If you were describing this killer, because not many women out there are 6'2", are they?
No. And would you say that the voice of Bobby, like you said, it doesn't sound like Michael Caine?
It's not Michael Caine, no.
Would you say that's the only real cheat in the film?
It is.
Unless he couldn't really be holding a box towards the phone.
No, Michael Caine's got a very distinct accent, hasn't he? He's very much a British thespian. You're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off.
Exactly. So I think that's definitely the cheat that does, put you off.
Bobby's voiced by somebody called William Finley, who actually appeared earlier in Sisters, and he's known for being kind of an odd, villainous-looking character. But he plays
an oddball in the Funhouse as well.
Yes, he does. Correct. Yeah, and it's just his voice that was used. Now, obviously, it's meant to throw us off. It can't be Dr. Elliot because of this patient called Bobby, etc. And just quickly again, getting back to kind of the Argento echoes here. There's a moment where he realises the razor blade's gone and it's on this red velvet.
That's right.
Bird with a crystal plumage.
Yeah, I was thinking that at the same time.
That can't be a coincidence. I mean, as soon as we see this red velvet and this missing razor, I'm thinking Giallo straight away. I'm thinking Bird with a crystal plumage.
I actually think that De Palma's lying when he says he hasn't seen anything up until this film. It's complete rubbish.
Yeah,
it's complete rubbish.
Yeah, but I think it's an effectively well-made film. As you said, it's kind of a cheat with the whole. I mean, at the end of the movie as well, we get the whole kind of the explanation, much like Psycho, when we find out the psychosis behind the killer. In Psycho, there's that whole kind of what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of the word. Exposition. In which we're explained, as to why Norman was doing this, and we get that at the end of this film.
You can see why people would lump it into, as a Psycho ripoff, but to me, I think it's so much more than that. I really do.
Yeah, I think, I think with De Palma, I know De Palma has his detractors because some people do see him as a kind of a Hitchcock kind of ripoff and stuff. I see it as paying homage. I do. I at the end of the day, I mean, Sisters was a good movie. Again, you can't help but shake the whole Rear Window from that film as well as Obsession, in 76. There's definitely parallels there to 58's Vertigo. But
I don't think he was one to take on board the fact that, people were mentioning Hitchcock and mentioning Argento and different things. I think he didn't really like that, from what I can gather in some of his interviews.
Yeah.
And I would say it's slightly unfair. Obviously, there's nods there. There's nods in most films, for most filmmakers. But I honestly think he does something so, it's unoriginal, but it's original, if you know what I mean. There's parts of it that's really original. So I think he gets a bad rap in that respect.
I mean, even with we're Carrie, he actually uses the Bernard Herrmann shower scene score in various moments during the film. For example, when she uses her powers to make the young boy fall off his bike, and when I think it's the windows and that all shut. When she kind of loses it with her mother as well. But I think what Dressed to Kill, it is, yes, it clearly pays homage to the amount of parallels it has to Psycho are quite staggering. But at the same time, it's a film that's efficiently made. Brian De Palma, as I say, he's a good director. He's a very good director.
But you notice, along with the Giallo genre, you've got two amateur sleuths as well.
Yes. Obviously, the son
young boy
of Andrew Dickinson's, who actually goes on to kind of team up with, I keep forgetting her name, Liz.
Yeah, Liz.
Yeah, Nancy Allen's character.
I think he's really likeable. He is as a young man. He's a bit of a nerd.
Yeah.
I think we can all relate to that.
He builds his Peter, doesn't he? He's playing with his Peter.
Yeah, and funny enough,
which
there
is a
is a little
pun.
bit of humour throughout the film, isn't there?
Yeah, that is actually a pun. I never realised that Peter was actually a word for a penis. I had absolutely no idea about that, but there is kind of a little joking pun there when she says about working on your Peter.
Well, I didn't realise the first few times I watched the film, it just went completely over my head. But in recent years, I've watched it quite a few times, and yeah, you get the joke there.
Yeah. And De Palma has like a certain, certainly in his earlier films as well. He has certain filming techniques that he likes to adopt on a regular basis. And with this film, this was also in Sisters. This was also in Carrie. I can't quite remember if it was in Terror at the Opera. But there's actually a scene or opera. No, what's the film called actually? Is it Phantom of the Paradise? Sorry.
Oh right, yeah.
There's actually moments in the film that does split screening.
I've not seen Phantom of the Paradise, but from what I know, I think there is split screened in it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's split screening obviously in Carrie and Sisters, where we see two scenes happening separate from one another on screen at the same time.
Yeah, he was one of the first, I think, to use this.
Yeah.
And it works well, I think it works really well. I think we see the one scene, don't we, when you got Michael Caine and he's watching an episode of Donahue with a transsexual.
Which, again, that gives the whole game away.
Yeah.
To me, that just, like, screams, hang on a sec. It's just that reaction he makes when he's hearing about there was a transgender on screen talking about, what was it again? Talking about the different people that had sex changes and so forth.
And there's this guy on there, and you can see it's obviously real footage, and he's like, I don't want to get too much into it. It looks really freaky. And at the time, I bet that was really shocking. Today people wouldn't bat an eyelid. But at the time, that was really shocking.
Yeah.
So you've got the split screen. I think she's on the phone. Liz is on the phone to try and get money.
Yeah.
Off one of her clients. But he uses the split screen really well. Really well.
Yeah. He's obviously watching that documentary. Obviously a transgender person. And to me, that really kind of gives the game away. Right, kind of there and then, just the way I interpreted that whole scene.
Yeah, which makes me think that it's more, not so much like the murder mystery aspect he's concentrating on. Because like you say, after 15 minutes, you pretty much know anyway.
Yeah.
If you've been watching these films a while.
Yeah. Now, originally, there was an opening that was going to happen that got scrapped. Apparently, the film was originally going to open, because obviously you've got the shower scene, but what it was going to be was... we were going to get a scene with the killer performing their own kind of sex change operation in the bathroom. But the killer was going to be disguised through lighting and some clever photography. That was going to be the original opening to this film.
Isn't he supposed to cut off his penis, but they thought it was going to be a bit too...
That would have... Yeah. I believe their own...
With a straight razor.
Yeah. I mean, just the thought of that is just... Yeah. But obviously, for obvious reasons, way too controversial to start, a movie like that. So it didn't happen.
That would have been an interesting scene, but I think that would have got a Certificate X, wouldn't it? Surely.
Yes.
It's done in I Spit on Your Grave and a couple of other films. But yeah, that would have been really interesting to see that in here. Yeah. To see how the film would have developed, because I don't know whether that many people would have seen it if that scene was included.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously this film, very had a very mainstream release and that, and as you said, I mean, Nancy Allen as well became a bit of a kind of reigning scream queen of the era, really, didn't she? When you consider she was in like Carrie 4 years prior, Dressed to Kill, and then Blowout. I mean, obviously she starred in RoboCop, sci-fi film in '87 and that. But yeah, she started to make a name for herself, and that was really thanks to Brian De Palma.
I think she's a really bad actress. Again, it don't stop you from enjoying the film. I just think she's there for her looks, and that's not a bad thing, because she is a looker, mind.
Yeah.
What I was going to say, do you notice the two sort of cameo parts from actors as stars in slashers? You've got the Liz visits a client, and it's Brandon Maggot from Christmas Evil.
Oh, no, I didn't actually notice that, no.
Yeah, the client. He's only in it for bloody 30 seconds a
Yeah.
minute.
Okay.
And then you've got when she's jumped in the taxi and you've got the blonde lady pursuing Liz.
All right. Yeah. Yeah.
The taxi driver is Bill Randolph, who was in Friday the 13th Part 2.
Oh. Okay. No, I
He's the
didn't
one who
notice that.
gets. He's the one who gets a spear through his back.
Oh. Okay. No, I
The
didn't
one,
actually notice that.
Yeah, that's a scene from Bay of Blood they copied.
Oh, okay, yeah, the double impalement. Yeah, best death of the film. Best death in both films, in my opinion.
Yeah, again, he's only in it for like a minute. But,
yeah.
Yeah, I was going to come on to the subway scene.
Yeah, the subway, we get this whole kind of pretty intense, the kind of chase sequence that we kind of come to expect from Slasher and Giallo and so forth. And, obviously, again, kind of a blink and you'll miss it kind of moment. You actually see the killer in the background actually go onto the train.
And you notice the scene from Maniac when the nurse, I think it's a nurse, getting stalked through the subway in New York City.
Oh, yes.
That just reminds me totally of that scene.
Yeah, it's written. Now, we're going to quickly talk as well, because Michael Caine didn't actually play the killer, did he, until the final scene of the movie in his office. Now, I always thought it was Caine himself, but it actually wasn't. It was an actress called Susanna Clem, I believe. And obviously at the end of the movie, kind of a little twist thing, if you will, there's actually a female police officer that has actually been following them during the course of the film. She's the actress that actually played the killer in the movie also for most of the scenes.
That's right, and she quite eerily looks like Michael Caine.
That's what made me think it was Michael Caine for a long time.
Yeah. I don't know whether that was done on purpose or what, but she's really close to looking like him.
Yeah, definitely.
But even if it was done on purpose, the little twist with her being the policewoman at the end as well.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone would have guessed that.
No, I mean, she only appears, at the end of the movie, but yeah, that was her playing the killer for most of the movie. It's a real kind of creepy shot, for example, like the scene that we get kind of earlier in the film when we see, Dr. Elliot, dressed as the woman behind the door, like the window of the door.
Yeah.
And then
definitely.
And, the shot of, like, on the subway, again, getting back to the subway, we see them through the door. And then, of course, the camera pans away, and then, of course, they're gone. And, of course, the young boy, Peter, I believe it is, shows up and actually saves the day. And
she was going to get slashed up bad there, wasn't she?
Yeah, it's a really good scene. And the thing is, I definitely want to talk about kind of the ending here, all right? We get that kind of Carrie-esque ending with the whole kind of, but the whole build-up to it is just great. Yeah, the suspense. I mean, he handles suspense really well in that final scene. Where
you've got the storm outside as well.
Yeah.
It just sets it up beautifully.
Yeah. Dr. Elliot, obviously now this is the thing. I was watching this and I was thinking to myself, how the hell can he fit into that nurse's outfit, and how come the shoes fit perfectly?
Yeah, I think you've got to suspend.
I was like, hang on, Michael Caine's a big guy, he's 6'2", now. And also, the nurse that he actually kills, she's actually dressed up like a pornographic nurse, if you will. I don't think nurses actually wear them kind of things underneath their clothes.
Yeah. And again, you might find this quite funny, but it always reminds me of the end of Slaughter High.
Oh, yeah.
When Marty kills the nurse and dresses up to escape.
Yeah.
I always think of that for some reason when I see that scene.
Yeah, but, so we get the whole kind of, Dr. Elliot has escaped, and he's obviously made his way to Liz. I got her name now. Liz's home. And, of course, they're waiting behind the door. She's coming out of the shower, and just that whole scene, they're waiting there behind the door, and it's the use of music, it's the camera. It's a really suspenseful scene.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure if it was actually tacked on after they filmed the whole film, just to give it another boost.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's definitely one of the pluses, because you're actually questioning what you've seen then for the past, say, 90 minutes.
Yeah.
While you're watching that scene.
It's handled really well. It's very suspenseful. But, of course, we learn that, and then, of course, she gets her throat cut. And then of course it does the kind of the Carrie-esque kind of, it was a nightmare, which actually does kind of make sense then, because as I just some of the points I just brought up, how the hell can he fit in that nurse's outfit and the shoes and all that all goes out the window because it's only a dream sequence anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And there's definitely another Psycho nod at the end when she's in the shower.
Yeah.
All nasty.
Yeah, so, I actually wanted to... I'm not sure if I actually mentioned, because obviously, when earlier in the film, when Angie Dickinson's character, actually gets it on with this guy and that. And that's another thing that this film utilises on at least, I think, 3 or 4 occasions, in fact. There's a moment where a character remembers something. Now, again, almost kind of Giallo-esque, if you will. And we get a physical representation of what they're remembering. For example, her knickers in the taxi.
That's right, yeah.
And her wedding ring, I believe, in the guy's bedroom.
Well, leaving her wedding ring in the bedroom, actually, that's why it adds to her demise, really, but because she had to go back for it. Otherwise, she wouldn't have encountered the killer.
No, that's right. Yeah. And of course,
but yeah, very, very. I agree. It's very Giallo-like.
Yeah, the venereal, because obviously she learns that she's got a venereal disease, and it's actually, I believe, had to look into this actually. The 17th of November, 1980, the day that's Scorsese's birthday.
Oh right, yeah. That must have been put into
yes,
play.
De Palma's little nod to Scorsese there. So yeah, I think Dressed to Kill, what it does well. As I said, it's not really. I suppose it's predictable in the sense of we can work out who the killer is and etc. But it really doesn't detract from the film. It has a lot of, obviously. It's kind of Hitchcock, but obviously living in an age now where there's obviously it's more overtly sexual and more brutal.
Yeah. So do you think the film, me personally, I don't think the film gets enough love and attention. I think it kind of got lost, or maybe through the violence against women back in the early 80s.
Yeah, it was dubbed as being really misogynistic, it was. It was kind of reviled by some, but I think from an artistic standpoint, it's very much appreciated. But at the same time, De Palma has his detractors who are just, it's ripping off Hitchcock. I know a lot of people that really love this film. I know a lot of people that love it.
Yeah, I'm definitely one of those. I'm just going to pick up on a point. What did you think? Because I don't think we spoke about him. About Dennis Franz as an actor.
Dennis Franz also appeared Blowout, didn't he? 1981. That was his second collaboration with De Palma. I love him in this film as the cop because he's really got it. He really doesn't like the fact she's a prostitute. I love that. What is it he says to her? What is it? You're a Park Avenue whore, but you're still a whore.
Yeah. But he's obviously he's playing a game with her because he knows she's not the killer. He's not telling her that.
Yeah.
I think he's fantastic in everything I've seen him in.
Yeah. He's really good.
He's just an absolute natural of playing an asshole.
He is. And in Psycho 2, of course, he really kind of really kind of gives it to Norman Bates.
Yeah, he even ups the asshole sort of part in Psycho 2 to this film. He's even worse. Yeah. Arguably worse.
He does. And Psycho 2, as mentioned before, I did a podcast on that a little while ago. Psycho 2, again, is, I think, a great sequel. I think Psycho 2 is a film it's a lot better than it had any real right to be. It really is.
Yeah. Go on.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think Dressed to Kill is a perfectly good film. I think it's well made. I think it's a film that manages to be suspenseful. Like I said, yes, all right, predictable. If you've seen Psycho, you'd work this out very quickly, I think. But that doesn't detract from the film for me at all.
No, I would sort of say the same. I find everything about it, it's one of my favourites.
Yeah.
I say, like the music, you've got a suspense, obviously. I don't want to keep...
Bobby's voice is creepy. On the phone.
Yeah. There is that one little cheat that I know, with the voice. Some people might think, it might take them out of the film at the end or whatever. To me, it doesn't. I think most people would not really bother about that.
Yeah.
But this come off 1980 New York City And at the same time, or within a year or two of each other, we had Maniac, Cruising, Windows, The New York Ripper.
Yeah.
And a couple of years before that, we had The Eyes of Laura Mars.
Yeah.
And I find I really like these New York-based slashers. For some reason, I really like them. I think the old use in this film as well of New York City as a backdrop is fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like a time capsule, you know?
It is. And I think when she was actually getting it on with the guy they were in, obviously it was shot in New York in the cabin. Apparently there were loads of gawkers observing the scene and shouting right on policewoman, because I think she was in the television role prior to this. I can't recall what it actually was, but there were a lot of gawkers. Can you imagine filming this scene, like essentially having a sex scene in a cab in the middle of New York?
Exactly, yeah. And I would imagine that was pretty, going on a bit anyway at the time.
Yeah.
There's people having sex everywhere in New York at the time.
And it's her favourite film. Angie Dickinson actually said in an interview that basically this was her favourite movie that she actually starred in, which is ironic because this film was dubbed as being misogynistic and, it was slated. It was slated, but I think it's certainly a film that's gone on to be appreciated by a lot of fans of the genre.
Yeah, she's championed the film quite a bit in it. I've seen in interviews and that.
Yeah,
and I think even Michael Caine, some of the top stars, they won't go back to their slasher roots or whatever. But even Michael Caine, I think, has got good things to say about the film.
Yeah,
I think everyone sort of worked well with De Palma, from what I can gather.
Yeah. Yeah, De Palma was apparently supposed to be like a very good person to work with. A very kind of proficient director. At the same time, from what I understand with De Palma as well, he wasn't the most... He's not somebody that really kind of mingled with the cast and crew too much, either.
No, yeah, I read that as well. But a little bit of fun, like, obviously it was the first Razzie Awards the year this film came out.
Yeah.
And he was nominated for Worst Director,
yeah,
along with William Friedkin for Cruising.
There you go. So.
And, wait for it, Stanley Kubrick for The Shining.
Yeah. I know.
That tells you what they know.
And The Shining is widely regarded by many to be one of the best horror films of all time.
It's in my top 5.
Yeah, I think Stanley Kubrick, it does an absolutely fantastic job with The Shining. I can fully understand why Stephen King hates it, because basically Kubrick was essentially turning it into his own thing. It's vastly different to the book. I love them both just for different reasons. But yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
Stephen King champions the remake more, which is just crazy. But I was going to come on to in the Razzies again, the worst actress nomination was Nancy Allen, along with Shelley Duvall from The Shining.
Yeah.
And I have to agree with the Shelley Duvall thing. But again, I think her being so terrible in The Shining, it works for me. I really do, because she comes across as a neurotic.
Yeah.
But Michael Caine was also nominated as the worst actor.
Yeah. It's mad.
It's crazy.
With Shelley Duvall, bless her. I really do feel for her, because she was basically, as you probably know, ended up having a nervous breakdown. She was very much bullied on set by Kubrick. She was put through hell making that movie. She really was.
And it comes through on screen. You can see on screen.
Yeah, that scene with Jack Torrance, with Jack Nicholson going up, it took 237 takes, which I believe is actually in the record books. I believe that may still be the most takes ever for a single scene.
Didn't they shoot the film over like 1 or 2 years, maybe?
Oh, the film was in production for a long time, yeah. I mean, it was released in 1980, but I believe they started in 1976.
We will have to cover the film, because like you say, it's one of my favourites and all that. The only thing I would be a bit apprehensive about covering it is whether you could cover it without taking like 2 hours.
Yeah.
Because there's so much going on in that film.
Yeah, sorry, it couldn't be 76. It must have been at least 77, because the novel was actually released in 1977. So Carrie was released in 1974, the book, and I think The Shining was 3 years later. But I mean, it's kind of crazy, and that as I said, it's considered to be a classic of the genre. I know some people that aren't keen on The Shining. I know some people that find it vastly overrated. And with King and preferring the TV miniseries, I mean, he was actually involved with that as well, wasn't he? He was actually involved in the whole production of that.
It's what I didn't like about the TV miniseries. You had his wife pretty much Jack Torrance's
Rebecca
wife.
De Mornay, wasn't it?
Yeah, was played off like some kind of sex kitten. Well,
Yeah.
you know, I just couldn't get my head around that. So,
Yeah.
you know, seeing the original. But yeah, I just want to go on as well. This film's budget was $6.5 million, and it made $31.9 million in the box office.
Yeah, see?
So it was really a huge success.
It was a big success. And as you said with Cruising, these are two films released at the time they came out. You know, it's kind of easy to see why it did cause controversy. It is easy to see why, especially with Cruising, especially with Cruising.
I think Cruising at the time got a bad rap,
yeah,
and all that. But I think just now people are starting to warm to that film. I honestly, it's one of my favourites again. Cruising. I think it's William Friedkin is just a master in my eyes.
Yeah, William Friedkin. I mean, directing what is dubbed, you know, by many to be one of the greatest horror films of all time. You know, The Exorcist. He was a director that clearly liked to challenge audiences. I mean, The Exorcist was a film that really made a big impact, and then of course Cruising, just for different reasons.
But The Exorcist is flawless. You know, you could watch that film. I've watched director's cut. I've watched, you know, all the versions theatrical.
Yeah.
And it's just purely flawless.
Yeah.
And I think Cruising as well is just, for what it does, you know, it's a little bit more than a slasher film.
Yeah.
But I honestly do, you know, again, if people are listening to this and you've not seen Cruising, then seek it out.
Yeah, it was actually released on Blu-ray, wasn't it? I think over a year ago now. It does actually have an official UK Blu-ray release.
It took its time coming out on Blu-ray, but it's really good edition.
Yeah. So yeah, Dress to Kill, I think overall, I think it's a pretty solid film. You know, I like it. It's one of my personal favourite. I'm not saying that it's De Palma's best. It's not his best film, not in my opinion, but it is certainly one of my favourites. It's one of my personal favourites of his. If you're a fan of, be it Hitchcock, be it Giallo, this film has all of them kind of ingredients.
I think you can argue a case whether, for me anyway, that Carrie's a better film, and I wouldn't argue with you.
Yeah.
But for me, it's in the top two. It's this and Carrie.
Yeah.
For me, the two I really, go back to a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I do love his other films, when he started to veer in other genres. I do really like Scarface, with Al Pacino. I really do like The Untouchables. I actually think Mission Impossible is a good film, and I would still say the 1996 film is probably my favourite in the franchise for the fact of it wasn't just an out-and-out action film. It was very much kind of an espionage thriller. And I think De Palma did a pretty good job. Have you not seen Mission Impossible?
I've seen clips of it on telly. It just doesn't, seem to just be my thing, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I've seen stuff like The Fury, and Sisters I like a lot.
Sisters was good, yeah.
Obsession, I don't know, it didn't quite click for me.
Okay, yeah.
Again, I think you've got William Finley as the, maybe the killer, isn't he? It's been a while.
Yeah.
But he's this really dorky guy, and I just see it just felt a bit flat to me.
Okay.
But maybe I was expecting a bit too much, having seen Dress to Kill.
Yeah. That was, obviously, 4 years prior in that. So, we were, so that's pretty much it for today. Dress to Kill, I think it's safe to say it's a film that we both really like. Our next podcast is going to be on a classic psychological horror movie released in 1973, and that is Don't Look Now. Now, I know this is one of your favourite movies of all time, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I would put Suspiria is probably my favourite. I would put this second or third, similar to The Exorcist.
Yeah.
I absolutely love this film, and not that many people, to me, seem to have seen it. And we really need to push this forward to get people to see it.
Yeah, I think Don't Look Now is very much one of the best of the subgenre of psychological horror movies. But we're going to save that. We're not going to talk about that now. We're going to save that for the next podcast. So, thanks to everyone that listened. And we'll be back again soon to haunt you and torment you. Just going to give a couple of shout-outs. If you're interested in stop-motion animation, I have a friend, Dean Mallison, who does stop-motion films. Dean Mallison Films, that's Mallison. And film reviews and game reviews. A friend of mine, Matt, his channel, his website is entertainmenttalk.org. for film and game reviews. So thanks a lot to everyone that listened, and we'll be back again soon.
And yes, and I'll see you all soon, and can't wait for the next episode.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.